Listen-only mode.
A very good afternoon. A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Techgig webinar series. The topic for today's session is BPM in the cloud, and we have with us today Mr. Prasanna Selvaraj. He's the senior consultant at Mindtree Limited. Prasanna is a BPM SOA architect in Mindtree, as I already stated. He has around 10 years of experience and has been instrumental in leading teams to execute complex BPM and SOA implementations. His experience encompasses application design and development, solution architecting, and defining BPM and SOA roadmap. Before I hand over the session to Prasanna, here are a couple of quick things for all the attendees today. Prasanna will be taking us through his presentation till about 11:45 a.m. today, and post that for 15 odd minutes we will be taking in a quick round of questions from all the attendees. We will try to take in as many questions as possible during those 15 minutes. However, if there are any questions left out, our speaker today will be more than happy to take them offline with each one of you. During the session, however, if you face any problem in regards to the connection audio, please feel free to message me. And without any further delay now, I hand over the session to Prasanna. Prasanna, over to you.
Yeah, thanks Srilatna, and thanks for that introduction as well. So I hope everybody's able to see my screen.
Yes, I can see your screen, and attendees request all of you to quickly drop a message in the chat window if you can also view Prasanna's screen right now. So I think everyone can view your screen. You may start, Prasanna, with your presentation.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Srilatna. So hello everyone, good morning. And on behalf of Mindtree and Osmosis, I welcome you all. And Osmosis is Mindtree's premier technical event where Mindtree minds will collaborate, share, and participate their technical contributions. So I once again welcome you all, and I hope you'll enjoy this presentation. So just before I start, yeah, very brief introduction about me, just from whatever Srilatna has introduced. So I'm a BPM solution architect with Mindtree's EA BPM practice. So my primary expertise is on areas like BPM SOA and VRM, and I specialize on the IBM SOA stack. I am pretty much a technologist, so nothing excites me like a piece of code. And off late, I'm kind of hooked to graph databases like Neo4j and the Hadoop. So I think this should be suffice for now. So let's get going. So if you have come this far, subscribing to this presentation, probably I think you guys are hooked to BPM and how BPM is getting impacted with the advent of cloud technologies. So what is it in for you in this particular webinar? Okay, so I'm going to briefly take you over, what BPM is all about and, and why is it required. So this is going to be pretty much a fast track. So considering the high number of audience, I will just have a very brief introduction on BPM and its various advantages. And also, we're going to see what are the current challenges in today's world in adopting BPM and BPMs. So one such obvious challenge is the high entry cost into BPMS, and that's what we are going to mitigate with this presentation. And why should an enterprise invest in BPM solution in the cloud? So apart from the economical reasons like cost benefits, what are the advantages? So we're going to explore that in detail. So having moved a solution to cloud, an obvious question would be, how security is managed. So when something is put outside a corporate firewall, security becomes a threat. So we're going to explore some of the possible solutions, how to manage solution which is deployed in cloud, how to manage security. And we are going to also take a peek into the latest breed of middleware technologies called the cloud to on-premise connectors. So basically, these middleware technologies enable on-premise applications to interact with applications deployed on cloud. So we'll take a peek into it. And finally, I'm going to run through a couple of examples with regards to the runtime architecture of having a BPM solution in the cloud and how it would impact an IT infrastructure landscape. So the first example is by having a BPM solution in the cloud, and the second example is having a BPM solution on-premise and how the BPM solution will interact with various SaaS-based and process-based applications. So I'm going to finish this presentation at one stretch and possibly take your questions towards the end of the presentation. Okay, to begin with, what is a business process? So from the early days of man, right from man graced earth, and right from the days he invented spears and weapons, and right from the days he invented wheel to machines, everything had process involvement. So without process in place, probably man wouldn't have done these things. So for example, if you walk across your street to a nearby grocery store, or if you take a look into your Fortune 100 company, these two things have one thing in common. Basically, these two enterprises, buy some goods and they sell some goods. And in between, with the buying and selling, they obviously make a profit, because without profit, they wouldn't even exist. So when somebody buys a goods, they transform it into a different product, probably a finished product, and sell it off. So there is a transformation in between. And this transformation involves process. And that is what we are concerned about. How we can manage this process more effectively. So at first place, why do we want to manage this? So to bring down the operational cost. So if somebody brings down the operational cost, obviously an enterprise can increase its profits, and that is the bottom line. So how can process be managed effectively to decrease operational cost? So operational cost is not only the only advantage, but with effectively managing process, one can increase the quality, and one can probably improve the standard of the product, probably improve the customer satisfaction. So process plays a very important aspect, in all these things. So how does BPM help effectively manage this? So basically, BPM is all about creating value more effectively. So let's see how BPM would help that. So before that, let's quickly review another example. So from now, we should be already aware that all businesses have processes. So if you take a fictional example, let's say in a Bank of Neverland, let's talk about a loan processing process. So a customer walks into your bank, fills out a form for a loan application, requesting a loan. He hands it over to the loan agent. The loan agent quickly punches in some details into a system, probably a CRM system, and he hands over some paperwork to a back office agent. The back office agent, performs some kind of an SSN check or a background check against the customer and reports it to your manager. So the manager now has two choices, either to approve the loan or reject the loan, and he does it on his judgment. So basically, this is a very simple process, straightforward, no chaos. But what happens when this process grows? So, and I hope everybody will understand that in a real world, these kind of simple process never exist. It's always much more complex than what I've described. Now, so what happens when these processes grow? So instead of being one loan application, we have hundreds of loan applications across different branches spread across a whole country. So now the complexity increases. How will a loan manager know what loans are approved and what loans are rejected, and what are the rejection reasons? So basically, a loan manager needs to have the visibility. And if a loan has been rejected, a loan manager needs to know why it got rejected and needs to know in real time, as opposed to knowing after the loan being rejected after say a day or two. So he wants to take an immediate action. So basically, with the manual process, when the process grows, it becomes chaotic, and it just increases the lack of visibility. So how can BPM solve this problem? So before we talk about BPM, I just want to clear some air and possibly clear some misconceptions around BPM. So BPM, business process management, can mean different things to different people. BPM is a methodology. BPM is a technology as well. And BPM is a philosophy as well. So we're going to look at how BPM as a methodology will help transform a chaotic process into a formalist one. So as we've seen earlier about the loan processing process, so basically if somebody needs to apply a BPM methodology, like some of the common methodologies like Six Sigma or value chain mapping, Kaizen or Lean, you can apply these principles and basically convert informalist process into a formalist one. So in the slide in the bottommost diagram, you can see that you can see the layers of separation, and you can see the different roles and responsibilities assigned to different people and to different systems. So basically, with the BPM methodology, you can possibly arrive at such a formalist process. But how it helps it? So do you think process owner can get visibility and can he get a loan application saved in real time? Probably not. So we have to take a peek into BPMS technology. So today, technologies in terms of BPM suites exist, wherein formalized process can be automated. But automation alone is not going to help in terms of achieving visibility or control over the process, or in terms of monitoring, or in terms of real-time status. So basically, BPM suites provide everything in terms of real-time monitoring, in terms of analytics, and in terms of reporting. So as you've already seen, about automation, BPM needs to do some things, to enforce process and to increase visibility. So BPM applies a set of life cycle steps, to make a formalized process into an automated one, and whereby it just tries to increase the visibility of the process as a whole. Let's take a high-level view of a BPM example. Okay, so in the topmost diagram, you see a kinetic process, a very kinetic process like an engineering change notice. So very similar to your loan processing application, but when you consider the level of complexity, it's much more complex. So basically, you can see lot of handoffs between different people and different systems. So basically, with such a process, the focus is more on controls, not on outcomes. Even when a task is done efficiently at a siloed level, the outcome is not managed correctly. And also with traditional systems like ERP or distributed or the mid-range and the mainframe systems, business have to adapt to technology, and business have to always work around with the limitation. So business drives technology was kind of quite opposed to traditional systems. But with smart BPM suites, nowadays, business can be completely driven by technology. So in the below diagram, you could see a high-level, model BPM architecture. So we spoke about the visibility and control. So how BPM is going to provide this visibility and control. So in terms of unified dashboards and reports. So a BPM system is going to span across different applications and and different people. So basically, it's going to span across boundaries and sometimes even organizational boundaries too. So with unified dashboards and reports, a BPM can collate and pull data from a lot of different systems and present a unified view to a manager or to a subject matter expert. as opposed to an application view or a system view. So this will establish a process view, which will provide more visibility and more transparency. And BPM also helps to establish real-time monitoring. So what do we mean by real-time monitoring? So when a business exception happens, a BPM system will enable to take action on real time as opposed to taking action on something which already had happened. So a good example might be, in a traditional enterprise is using the business intelligence systems. They use a data warehouse to query a lot of data and find out anomalies in terms of business transactions. So with such kind of data pulls using BI tools and data warehouse tools, you get to act one day after something has already happened, as opposed to a BPM, which provides a real-time monitoring and alerting mechanism. So finally, BPM provides an end-to-end analytics. So as we have already seen that BPM spans across systems, it will be able to collate metrics in terms of KPI and SLA, and it will give you a realistic chance to improve your process. And this process improvement is a continuous activity too. And finally, in a nutshell, BPM works well with a mature integration layer. So basically, BPM complements SOA and vice versa. So having seen the basics of BPM, let's quickly discuss the adoption challenges. So one obvious challenge is the high cost of a BPMS suite. A BPM suite like Pega or IBM BPM or APN can cost you upwards of $750K. So we are not even talking about the total cost of ownership, it's just the licensing cost. So you could imagine what the total cost of ownership would be like. So this is a huge barrier, especially for the smaller and the mid-sized organizations. So if they have to do process innovations, they have to do a heavy upfront investment, and which is kind of very difficult to justify in terms of getting an ROI. So to mitigate this, cloud came to address this problem. So having a BPM solution on cloud, definitely cuts the upfront investment. So basically the cloud works on a subscription-based billing model where you pay for what you use. So definitely the upfront investment is reduced. So the rest of the presentation is all about how a BPM solution in the cloud is going to offer an organization benefits in terms of the cost and also benefits in terms of scalability. There are other BPM adoption challenges like BPM maturity model, lack of BPM vision, and how to establish a BPM COE. So all these line items itself needs an individual webinar, and probably we have to cover this as a separate presentation. So right now our focus would be only on the BPM solution in the cloud. So before we talk about the BPM solution in the cloud, let me quickly reiterate over some of the common cloud terminologies. So what is a cloud provider? A cloud provider basically offers infrastructure as service, platform as service, or software as service. So some examples could be the Amazon EC2, the IBM Cloud, or Microsoft Azure. So what is a cloud consumer? So in this fictional example, what we've taken, Bank of the Netherlands would be a cloud consumer. So not only the bank, its business partners, its customers, or its clients could all be the cloud consumers. There are two technical components within the cloud provider called the hypervisor and the automatic scaling listener. So what is a hypervisor? A hypervisor is responsible for provisioning the virtual service on the fly by interacting with an actual physical server. So it's a component within the cloud provider. And there is an automatic scaling listener, which actually monitors the communication between the cloud consumers. And it has the ability to scale down or scale up the infrastructure as required. And as required on as demand as well. So now we're going to explore the advantages of having a BPM solution in the cloud. The obvious advantages is cost, so I think we have covered in detail. But not every time, cost is an advantage. So sometimes it depends on the usage. So it's actually basically, buying a car and renting a car. If your usage is going to be pretty much, then probably, buying a car would make sense than renting a car. So the same applies to having to have a solution on cloud. If your organization needs heavy usage, then probably, it's better off with an on-premise solution than going for cloud. But having said that, cloud definitely reduces the entry barrier. So apart from the cost benefit, what are the other advantages? So one significant advantage of having a BPM solution in the cloud is the scalability, the scaling nature. So increasing business demands put great emphasis on scalability. In today's world, global businesses needs to expand to different geographies. It needs to extend its portfolios, and it needs to onboard new domains in terms of mergers and acquisitions. So how can an IT department within an organization be flexible and agile enough to handle such business demands? So when an organization acquires another organization, your IT department should be flexible enough to onboard the new acquired organization as quickly as possible. So this is possible with one of the inherent cloud architecture known as multi-tenancy. Multi-tenancy is basically the ability of a software program to host multiple tenants, with tenants not being aware of other tenants. So in a large organization, if you have different portfolios, and if each portfolio requires a separate domain, probably it's going to be the same shared infrastructure within a cloud-based BPM solution that will be shared across different portfolios. So when you have such an architecture, it's needless to talk about the cost advantage in terms of licensing. So it's a single license that's kind of shared, or it could be a subscription-based model, based on demand as well. So when the business expands, it will be a matter of days to provision a new portfolio or a new domain or to scale a new geography. The reason being, it's your cloud provider who is responsible for provisioning a new domain or a new server in the cloud altogether. That's kind of outsourced from an organization. So imagine an organization procuring a server and provisioning it and setting up the network. It would take months. And with the cloud provider and with the cloud-based BPM solution, it's going to be days. So that's a significant advantage. So another advantage is the dynamic scaling. So again, dynamic scaling is an inherent cloud architecture. So what I mean by dynamic scaling is the ability to provision a new virtual server on the fly, dynamically, on demand. Let's again go back to the fictional example of the Bank of Neverland. So let's say the bank operates in a North American region and it serves some of its BPM requests. So basically in the diagram you could see there are cloud service consumers, which are basically the Bank of Neverland service requests coming into the cloud provider, and an automated scaling listener listens to the incoming requests and it maintains a threshold. And the cloud provider serves the requests by passing it to the BPM server. So what if there is an increase in the number of requests? This could happen during end of the month when there's a lot of payroll processing to be done, or in a retail industry, if you could imagine, during a festival season, there will be a lot of activity, so increasing your business transactions. So there will be a sudden increase in the number of requests. So how will you handle such a demand runtime? And also we have seen a number of instances where the retail websites go down just before the holidays. So how can somebody handle that kind of a situation? And a cloud provider can do it for you. If you have a solution on cloud, basically when there is a surge in requirements, when there is a surge in the requests, an automated scaling listener listens to it. When the number of requests go above a certain specific threshold, the automated scaling listener interacts with a resource replication component which provisions a new BPM server. Actually, hypervisor is responsible for provisioning the new server, but it's not shown in the diagram. You could imagine a hypervisor replacing the resource replication component. So dynamic scaling is pretty much like a horizontal scaling in a cluster. So new BPM servers are provisioned on demand, and everything happens at runtime without manual intervention. We'll quickly see another scalability aspect within the provider. So it's elastic resource capacity. So here, instead of provisioning a new server, the resources within a server will be increased, like in terms of subpools or CPU subpools. Again, an automated scaling listener will listen to the incoming request, and when it goes to a specific threshold, the automated scaling listener will the signal intelligent automation engine to provide more results in terms of CPU or memory. So basically, somebody can write rules in the intelligent automation engine on what kind of memory or what kind of processing power they would require. So the dynamic scaling and the elastic resource capacity forms the basis of a cloud burst architecture. A cloud burst architecture is nothing but a new BPM or a new virtual service are provisioned on the fly, on demand, on a different cloud altogether. So when a cloud provider, they themselves exhaust out of resources, they query a new cloud provider. This could be within their entity as well. So this has some real good advantage in terms of having geographically dispersed servers. Say for example, when a business entity functioning in North America acquires a business entity in Asia, and they wanted to quickly up their infrastructure, IT infrastructure in Asia, with a cloud provider, with a cloud burst architecture, they can provision new servers in a different region altogether. And of course, your cloud provider need to support that kind of an architecture. But with today's technology, what I'm implying is it's possible. There are kind of legal implications within cloud provider, but it's definitely within the reach. So with inherent cloud-based architectures like dynamic scaling and elastic resource capacity, and also with cloud-based architecture, scalability goes to an extent that has never before imagined with on-premise infrastructure. So imagine, having such kind of scalable capacity within your on-premise infrastructure. You imagine the upfront investment cost required, you imagine the capital required, you imagine the maintenance cost required. So all this is done, and still you get the ability to scale up and scale. And the cool thing is you only pay for what you use. So these are some of the serious advantages of having a cloud-based solution, especially when you put a BPM solution. So when your business expands, it's just a matter of days to provision a new server, and sometimes with a cloud-based architecture, it could happen on demand and on runtime. So having seen the advantages of a cloud-based BPM solution, we'll quickly check out the security challenge. So even today, a lot of organizations are reluctant to move towards cloud because they're unsure about how secure their data is, how secure their IT assets are. That's of course is one challenge. The other challenges are the cloud availability as well and network latency. But to address the security as service, so you can think identity as a service as a single sign-on in cloud. So in today's scenario, an organization needs to interact with a lot of SaaS-based applications, and this is going to grow for sure. So basically, within an organization, a lot of needs to log into a SaaS-based portal and multiple SaaS-based portal. So each time, they can't have their credentials passed to the SaaS-based application. So instead, they'll offload the security authorization and authentication to an identity as a service provider. So basically, the identity as service provider will act as a single point of security enforcement point. So let's quickly see how it works. So let's imagine a known agent, logging into your portal. So basically, when he puts in his credentials, the credentials are picked up by the identity service provider, and the identity service provider interacts with the corporate LDAP, via IDA's agent. And once the IDA service gets authenticated, it's going to pass on the assertion to the SaaS-based applications. So in this example, we have seen, how a user in a web portal gets authenticated into a SaaS application. But it's just not only a human that is required to get authenticated. It can be a request or a transaction as well. So basically, the IDA has a capability to insert assertions into a particular request so that it gets authenticated or it gets authorized, and it can propagate into multiple SaaS applications. So some of the leading identity as service providers are Ping Federate, Empowered Identity, Active Identity, and there are a bunch of other service providers probably you can just check out by Google. So another probably a straightforward approach to handle the identity management is to copy over a corporate LDAP directory structure to a SaaS-based LDAP, or simply you make your SaaS talk to your corporate LDAP, which is behind your firewall. This kind of undesirable, having corporations reluctant to share the LDAP directory structure within the cloud-based SaaS application. And also, when your number of SaaS-based interactions grow, you have to do this kind of a synchronization over time and again. So the ideal solution is to have an identity as a service provider wherein you put your security in a hub and interact with your increasing cloud-based needs. So having handled security to a certain extent, we'll quickly take a peek into the cloud to on-premise connectors. So these are new breed of middleware technologies which enables on-premise applications to talk to the cloud-based systems. So this kind of communication is possible using an enterprise integration gateway or an ESB as well. So basically, the cloud to on-premise connectors have certain capabilities beyond an ESB, a traditional ESB can offer. So some of the benefits or some of the features here cloud to on-premise connector can offer you is some monetization features of web API. So sometimes organization needs to expose their API for their business partners or for their consumers or for their customers to consume. So in certain cases, they need to monetize the API. So products like IBM Castellan, has monetization features, which enable them to, charge an API usage per transaction. And cloud-based connectors have out-of-the-box, cloud-based adapters. With cloud-based adapters, you can talk to different clouds. So you get the adapters ready-made and built in. And cloud on-premise connectors have rich integration with social media. And it has rich data synchronization features. Whenever you want to upload data to your SaaS provider or download data from your SaaS provider to a data warehouse, cloud to on-premise connectors have such kind of an ability. And also, deployment flexibility exists in terms of where to deploy these connectors. It can either be on cloud or be on-premise. So some of the popular products in this space are IBM Castellan, Jitterbit, and CloudHub. Also, it's kind of debatable whether you need a cloud to on-premise connector or an existing ESP can solve the problem. It depends, and I'm going to leave the debate open, but certainly cloud to on-premise connectors can augment the ESB functionality. So we already know that if somebody needs features like monetization or cloud-based integration, these features needs to be kind of custom built using a traditional ESB. Okay, so now let's quickly explore a runtime architecture of having a BPM solution in the cloud. So this is an animated slide. I'm going to go a little slow because of the rendering. So let's again go back to our fictional example, the Bank of Netherlands, and let's consider a situation. So let's say the Bank of Netherlands has some in-house applications. So these in-house applications can range from legacy, mid-range, distributed ERPs, or to the latest platforms like Jive or Hammer. So the Bank of Netherlands, has a lot of interaction with external systems, not as the business partner systems, like investment banks, security firms, and background check processing applications. So the interaction to the external world happens via an enterprise integration gateway, or it can be termed as an ESPS. So all the communication, all data communication that's going out of the Bank of Netherlands and coming into is governed by the enterprise integration gateway, and the enterprise integration gateway acts as a security policy enforcement point by integrating with the corporate LDAP. And extract transform load batch process pulls the data from the in-house application and loads it into the data warehouse, wherein the data warehouse will produce the reports for the CA office. So to sum up, basically a traditional IT shop will look like this. The traditional IT landscape will look like this. So let's see how this landscape gets impacted with a BPM on cloud solution. Okay, let's say the Bank of Netherlands decides to have a cloud-based BPM solution. So as we have already seen, cloud to on-premise connector augments the traditional enterprise integration gateway. And we also know that in terms of deployment, flexibility exists in terms of where the cloud to on-premise connector can reside in cloud or can reside on-premise as well. So now the cloud will act as a single enforcement point for all data communications that is going out of the enterprise to the cloud-based system. So it's not necessary that a cloud to on-premise connector need to act as a security policy enforcement point. It can offload such tasks to the enterprise integration gateway. So in fact, in modern architectures, it's not the enterprise integration gateway which takes care of security. It will be offloaded to a identity manager like Tibogi. But that's beyond the scope of this particular presentation. So the point of having a cloud to on-premise connector, is that it would act as a hub for various communications from the on-premise systems to the cloud-based systems, and also this applies to the SaaS-based applications. So again, a BPM system on cloud itself can orchestrate to different SaaS-based applications by interacting from its cloud to another cloud. So now the discussion takes to another level. What would be the asset of an organization? So data is definitely an asset, but these are increasing application. So will integration be an asset to an organization? I pretty much guess so. So it's always recommended to have all the integration touch points in one place. So basically, it's having a hub and spoke architecture within the cloud integration. You have your integration logic embedded in one place, so that when an organization wants to move the BPM architecture from one cloud to another cloud, they really story about the integration logic. Or in case if somebody wants to replace a SaaS-based application with another SaaS-based application, it's going to be very minimal work with having all the integration logic in one place. So finally, The extract, transform, load, batch job will also pull data from the BPM cloud, and and it will feed into the data warehouse. So this is a topology for for having a BPM solution in the cloud. So let us quickly see another example wherein uh, wherein having a BPM solution on premise and how it can integrate with various SaaS-based applications. So it's just an extension of the previous example. The BPMS system orchestrates with ESP and it talks to the external world outside its firewall using the enterprise integration gateway. We have seen about the cloud on-premise connector, and it augments the ESP. So henceforth, we will always use the cloud integration gateway or the cloud on-premise connector. There's also a new breed of SaaS-based applications called business process service that is kind of coming into picture now. So the business process service itself can automate and orchestrate a lot of industry level processes. And in some cases, a BPMS system can offload its process activity to a process service provider too. And even that interaction happens via a cloud gateway. So we'll quickly see what this processes service provider can actually achieve. So some of the common BPAS characteristics, or simply process service characteristics, are process service provider sits on top of the SaaS and the platform as service and the infrastructure as service. And a process service must be highly configurable. So a process needs to be customized according to the needs and demands of an organization. So it needs to be configurable. So imagine a payroll processing application, running in a process service provider. So it needs to be configurable according to the payroll rules of a particular organization. And also it must have well-defined APIs, because a business process itself needs to connect to different systems. And also it must support massive scaling. And this is from a perspective of the process provider standpoint, because it needs to service multiple customers, and since they stand on top of platform as service and infrastructure as service, they should be able to support this kind of scaling. So some of the examples of process service providers are, from IBM, it's Clinical Development Panorama and Intelligent Back Office. So by the time we are watching this presentation, there will be a ton of other process service providers. So the industry is kind of maturing towards process service. So I'm just, quickly wrapping up this presentation. So we have seen the various dimensions of a BPM solution on cloud. So with these various aspects, still the threat to migration towards cloud remains the same in terms of cloud availability, data security, and network latency. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation. I hope you got some information out of it. So feel free to send in your feedback and views. I have my email ID listed down here. And also, as part of the Osmosis webinar series, there's an upcoming presentation from Mindtree A BPM practice, known as the multi-channel enablement through BPM Way. So I highly encourage you to participate in this presentation as well. So once again, thanks for joining this presentation. So now I'll just go over the questions and answer as much as possible.
Thank you so much, Prasanna, and you will find the questions in your questions window now. So far, I have assigned around 6 or 7. I'm going to keep sending more questions as they come to me.
Okay, sure. Okay, the first question is from Newswire. So I'll just read out the question. In your opinion, the cost benefit is only because of the hosting cost that the client doesn't need to buy the hardware to host it, or is it because of the licensing for BPM on cloud is different than on-premise? So to answer your question, it's actually both. So hardware is just one aspect of it. So if we are talking about infrastructure as service, but if you consider platform as a service as a whole, IBM provides IBM or Pega, and also APN, provides their development platform itself on cloud. So you need not worry about the infrastructure; it's just the platform and your runtime architecture. So the answer is both. The cost benefit is in terms of both hardware and software. So the next question is from Sachin. The question is, BPM hosted in cloud environment provides scalability, but could you please explain us about its efficiency in terms of performance and reusability? So performance in general, depends on a lot of things. Like if you talk about raw performance, that purely depends upon the network latency. So it depends upon the network speed. So obviously, a system deployed outside the firewall will take a hit in terms of performance. But it purely depends on what you wanted to achieve with the BPM performance. So basically, you are only offloading your process orchestration. So gradually, BPM or a cloud-based architecture, will gradually increase its maturity towards performance as well. So definitely, that is a valid concern. Yes, performance is a valid concern. I mean, if you look at the network speed as such, yes. So, and I have the next question from Deepak. I think it's the same question: performance overhead due to slowness in network speed. Yes, that's kind of answered, I guess. So I have another question from Newswire. Ignoring Pega, IBM, and the likes, how effective will cloud be if we compare the likes of Bonita, Intelio, JBPM, and Activity? So if we compare the small-time BPM players like Bonita or the Activity, so they don't provide a platform as a service, meaning we have to procure a license from Bonita or JBPM, and pretty much we have to subscribe to a infrastructure as a service from a cloud provider, and pretty much we have to do the installation. So I'm not sure how advantageous this kind of a solution would be. So the only consideration is if the cloud provider supports scaling, yes, this would be an advantage. So otherwise, just deploying a licensed product on a cloud provider wouldn't make much of a difference, unless if you are not considering scalability. Okay, I have another question from Newswire. So cloud providers usually charge for data download or upload from cloud. Do we have a use case for any scenario to compare the cost for on-premise implementation and the cloud implementation of BPM that includes on-premise integration? Yes, cloud providers do charge for the data upload and download. So I think that kind of a cost is pretty much negligible if you consider the overall cost of the platform as a service as a whole. So if you're talking about petabytes of data, then probably this is going to be a significant cost. But with a BPM solution, still I don't think organizations have moved towards that kind of a heavy weight architecture in cloud. So if we talk in terms of gigabytes and terabytes, probably that's going to be a very minimum charge in terms of cloud provider can charge for upload and download. Okay, so I don't see any more questions. So feel free to write down your questions and I'll be more than happy to respond to that.
Yes, Prasanna,
So
I'm sending you more questions.
yeah, okay.
I think some are follow-up questions as well, so please feel free to ignore if there's any repetition.
Sure. So I have another question from Manoj Patil. Who is responsible for the increased bandwidth or network limitations in cloud environment? Is it cloud provider or consumer? So, see, one way to alleviate the problem of the bandwidth and network latency is to go for a private cloud. So, meaning uh, it's a dedicated environment for a particular enterprise, and this kind of network can be managed using a virtual private network, thereby increasing the network latency, thereby decreasing the network latency. So that is one possible situation. So so if you ask who is responsible for increased bandwidth, there are too many players. It's based on your bandwidth, it's based on your telecom provider, it's based on the cloud provider, and it's based on the cloud consumer as well. So everybody plays a part of it. So, but one way to alleviate the performance issue is to go for a private cloud as opposed to a public cloud over a virtual private network. So another question from Newswire. On-premise has limitations in switching out of an existing BPM implementation. Does cloud offer any better way to switch in and out of a cloud hosted model? So if I understand the question correctly, the can a cloud provider itself be switched out to a different cloud provider? Yes, that is a possibility, but we have to imagine the migration cost. So that is definitely a possibility. But if you talk about migrating the whole of a BPM application altogether, then it's going to be a huge investment. So probably organization has to invest a lot of time in picking up the right BPM tool, because once they pick up, they have to stick around with it for some time. So otherwise, they are not going to realize the return on investment. But definitely, yes, cloud providers can be switched much more easily than a BPM product. But again, it depends on a lot of other things, what a cloud provider actually offers you. So, Shrina, do you have any questions or? Hello, Srilagna, can you hear me?
Yes, Prasanna, sorry. I'm just looking through the list. Yes, I think there is one last question from Newswire. Yeah, I have just sent the question over to you.
Okay. So where are the process definitions, etc. stored? So when you talk about process applications, they are definitely stored in the BPM application itself. So it depends where you are trying to host your BPM application. If it's in cloud, then your process applications reside in the cloud itself. And if you host an on-premise BPM platform, it will reside in your on-premise platform. But definitely, you can download your source code or download your data from the cloud to your on-premise on a regular basis. You can configure a batch job, or you can have it in your source control. You can have it refreshed on an ongoing basis. So, so I hope I have answered that question.
Okay,
Okay,
I
Srilana,
think
any more questions?
yes, one more question from Ramachandra. I'm just sending it to you. Yes, I have sent it to you, Prasanna.
So what is the implementation cost for BPM? Okay, unfortunately, nobody can answer this question, I guess. So the total cost of ownership depends on a lot of factors. So it's not like buying a car. So wherein you know about what upfront investment or what it's going to cost for buying a car. So I think the software based pricing, is kind of not transparent with a lot of with a lot of products. So it depends on licensing based model. It depends on CPU based pricing. Now with the cost, it depends on subscription based models. So and also different products have different range of prices. So Sega definitely for sure is very expensive. API and IBM follows it. So it's tough to predict what it would really cost for a BPM implementation. So there are a lot of other things to factor. So with the detailed analysis, probably we can get to that point. But yeah, so there are no numbers existing out there which we can put forth.
Yes, Prasanna, I think that would be all the questions for today's session. Let me quickly run through the list if you can give me a minute and I'll confirm.
Sure.
Okay, I see one or two more questions coming up. I'm going to assign them quickly to you. All right, you will find them in your questions window, Prasanna.
Yeah, sure. So got a question from Swapna Radhakrishnan. So question on dynamic scaling. Automatic scaling listener provisions new virtual servers if there is an increase in threshold, but if the load reduces, then would it also release the resources or server location? Yes. So that is the whole advantage of having an automatic scaling listener. When the number of requests go down, naturally the automatic scaling listener will deprovision a server. So basically, it depends on the classic subscription model of what you pay is what you use for. Another question from Newswire: what is the best way to check the readiness for cloud BPM? So that's a good question. So basically, it depends on what a cloud provider can offer. So you've seen about the scalability nature of cloud. So we'll first ensure that the cloud provider offers such kind of an architecture. So not every cloud provider can do that. But futuristically, yes, it's kind of possible. So we have to look in terms of whether we need a private cloud or public cloud or hybrid cloud, on what kind of connectivity we need. There are various aspects, but one important aspect is we have to get an SLA from the cloud provider on what their availability is. So and what geography they will be provisioning the servers, and what are the legal implications. So if you want to provision a server in, let's say, in Australia, so you have to bind to the jurisdiction of Australia. So naturally, your cloud provider needs to have an entity in Australia. So there quite a bit of aspect to it. So but in general, this is what you need to really look into the terms of what a cloud provider can offer. Okay, Srilanga, any more questions?
No, I think that's all for today. And as I already mentioned earlier, that if there are any more questions, please feel free to take them up with Prasanna offline. And you can also come on techgig.com and post your queries on our discussion forum. The recording of today's session will be available by tomorrow morning or latest by Monday afternoon. So please feel free to come on techgig.com and go through the session once again. Thank you so much, Prasanna, for taking time out today and giving this presentation and taking some of the most very interesting questions today, and I'm sure they will get back to you with more queries in future.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Srilatna, and thanks all for joining this presentation, and I appreciate your time. Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.